In this FRQ practice video, which comes from question 4 from the 2024 AP Bio exam, we're going to answer questions related to biodiversity, comparing high biodiversity systems with low biodiversity ecosystems. We're going to look at the relationship between biodiversity and resilience, and we're going to answer some questions related to species interactions. Are you ready for AP Bio Review? The common wild oat is native to regions of Europe and Asia, but is an invasive species in central California grasslands. In California, the common wild oat has almost completely replaced some species of native bunchgrass. Researchers found that aphids, a type of small insect that often carries plant viruses, have a much higher reproductive rate in grasslands that include the common wild oat than in grasslands composed of only native bunchgrass species. Additionally, the viruses carried by the aphids appear to affect only the native bunchgrasses and not the common wild oat. Native bunchgrasses infected by the virus have much higher death rates than do native bunchgrasses that are not infected. Question 4a. Describe the change in the resilience of an ecosystem when there is a decrease in the number of species. Pause the video, write out your answer, hit play to see my answer. Here's the answer. A decrease in the number of species decreases an ecosystem's resilience. A little bit of background. Resilience is the ability to bounce back from challenges. Here's two ecosystems. We have a prairie grassland over here that has many different species, and over here we have a field of corn with only one species. The cornfield is going to be much less resilient and much more vulnerable to things like disease, herbivores, environmental disturbances. And that's because if the corn is infected by, for example, a parasite, well, that's going to wipe out all the corn. It's going to essentially destroy the entire ecosystem, whereas a virus would probably only attack one of the many species that's in here. That one species would be affected, the other ones would be okay. So the ecosystem as a whole would fare better. Basic idea, more diversity increases resilience, less diversity decreases resilience. Question 4b, explain how the addition of the common wild oat affects the number of native bunchgrass plants that can be supported by the California grasslands ecosystem. Hit pause, write out your answer, hit play to see my answer. Before I show you the answer, I want you to look back at the text of the question where you'll see a lot of very useful information. The common wild oat is defined as an invasive species. Aphids are associated with the wild oat, and native bunchgrasses infected by the virus have much higher death rates. Knowing that, let's look at the answer. Your answer could focus on a couple of things. One possibility is to say that the wild oat competes with the native bunchgrasses for resources, reducing bunchgrass's population size. That's often how invasive species work. Or you could emphasize the virus. The wild oat brings aphids, which bring a virus that harms the bunchgrasses, reducing the bunchgrass population. If you want to crush it on this year's AP Bio exam, then you're going to have to write great responses on the FRQ portion of the exam. It's half of your score. Where can you learn how to do that? On learn-biology.com with our enhanced practice FRQs. You read a prompt, you type in your response. We give you feedback telling you about your answer's strengths and weaknesses. If you need help, you can ask for a hint. If you're really stuck, you can study a sample answer. We have dozens of practice FRQs, and this is the kind of practice and feedback that'll lead you to crush it on this year's AP Bio exam. So here's your plan. Go to learn-biology.com, sign up, use our enhanced practice FRQs to get the practice you need to succeed. We're going to look at questions 4, C, and D together. Part C, researchers suggest adding ladybugs, predators of aphids, to the California grasslands. Predict the effect of adding ladybugs on the abundance of the native bunchgrass population. And then for part D, justify your prediction in part C. Hit pause, write out your answer to C and D, and then hit play to see my answer. Your prediction should be something like this. Adding ladybugs will increase the abundance of native bunch grass. Here's why, here's your justification. The ladybugs will decrease the aphids, which harm the bunch grasses by infecting them with viruses. With fewer aphids, the bunch grass population will expand. I created a diagram to illustrate this. You didn't need a diagram, but this shows how the ladybugs have a negative impact on the aphids and how the aphids have a negative effect on the bunch grasses. So if you decrease the aphids, what you're going to wind up doing is enhancing the bunch grasses and their ability to thrive. As I've emphasized in other videos in this series, studying these past FRQs is fantastic, but remember, we're preparing for the next FRQ, the one you might face on this year's AP exam. So a key concept that I want to go over is the idea of a keystone species, because it appears in this FRQ. A keystone species is a species whose action within a biological community structures the entire community. Frequently, but not always, keystone species are predators who keep a particular herbivore in check, and their effect is an increase in the overall biodiversity of the community. Beavers are not predators, but their role in structuring wetlands, cutting down trees, creating dams, makes them act as a keystone species as well, vastly increasing the biodiversity of the systems in which they live. The idea of a keystone species is closely related to the idea of a trophic cascade, and that's a kind of ecological chain reaction that starts when a change at the top of a food chain affects organisms at other levels. In this question, we saw how the introduction of the ladybug suppressed the aphids, and that led to a growth of bunchgrass species. In the classic example of a trophic cascade and a keystone species, sea stars were experimentally removed from the intertidal zone. Sea stars prey on various other invertebrates, but most importantly, they prey on mussels. And when sea stars are removed, mussels overgrew the entire intertidal zone, and that led to a plummeting of biodiversity. And you can see that in this simple graph over here. When sea stars are present, the number of species is high, and when sea stars are experimentally removed, it plummets, and pretty much the only species that would remain would be mussels, which are shown over here. I want to encourage you to go to learn-biology.com, where you can practice with our enhanced practice FRQs with AI feedback. You type in an answer, you get feedback on the quality of your response, and that kind of feedback on these types of questions is going to make you into a great FRQ writer and put you on the road for a 4 or a 5 on the AP Bio exam. So what's your next move? Go to learn-biology.com, sign up so you can use our enhanced FRQs and all of our other AP Bio review resources, and to watch this next video.